Click the bell icon to get latest videos from Ekeeda.
Hello friends, today we will know that how to imply the security algorithms can be detected, that is it done in a right way or not. Vulnerability assessment is a way to do that, and we will see that how vulnerability assessment is done in every security measurement that works as a countermeasure against the vulnerabilities or the breaches on that security. So we will discuss that in details today. The system must be provide some type of security measures that should be implemented in a right way to take advantage of those measures. So how to define that the security measures are implemented in a right way or not? One way is to provide a vulnerability assessment on every security measures on a machine that is applying those measures. So when a machine is applying a security measure, then we can perform an assessment that in which area it is vulnerable to use that security measures, that even if that measure is not properly maintained, then the system is becoming vulnerable to the intruder to actually intrude in that system. So we can say that odds of loss of the suffering of data or the amount of data that is being intruded by the user and corrupted will give that the vulnerability assessment makes it very crucial to the importance of the operating system's behavior. Whenever these operating systems are using this vulnerability assessment, so it can say that in the particular area the system is vulnerable and can get this security measure to improve their measurement of the counterpart as the security implementation. So there are many areas like way to scan by the vulnerability assessment, which is using the part of the algorithm in the areas. The areas are: first, it is finding the unauthorized access information like stealing from this user ID password. Next, any improper authentication of the data or the files, improper authentication to the access rights to the files, unauthorized access to the system of that operating particularly on that computer or remotely based on that computer. Next is the port scanning that is supported by the cracker to get the vulnerability assessment. Next is the scanner or the spot bloomer or the Trojan horse that has intruded into the system. Next is to scan the threats or the attacker that is being done to the system. And lastly, it is the improper access or the illegal access by an user which is having a not user ID and password for that particular information. So after scanning this area, the vulnerability assessment can be done on the operating system to produce a result that to tell that which of the area are most vulnerable to get affected by the intruder, which can easily intrude in that area of that particular operating system's behavior. Now, systems that change due to the detection of values of checksums are also vulnerable. Network computers, rather than comparing with the walk-alone or stand-alone computers, are most vulnerable for these security measures. Say for a network which is connected with millions of computers and a computer get affected by the network security breaches, so all other computers have to suffer because the network that they are using is already breached on some intruder on some particular violation. So, the network computer suffers more of the violations according to the vulnerability assessment on this particular standalone comparison. Now, if some US government is using a very strict measurement of the security, like say if they are using a top level secret information, then they should be informed and used only by in an environment that is also top secret to that particular government. Say for a building or a cluster of building. So that information that is considered top secret can be accessed only that building and only that machine included that building. So whenever a user want to gain access on that office of that building, he used to protect that machine like anything. First, he used to data protection on the machine. Then it should protect the machine by locking it in a cabinet inside the room of the office, inside that environment. So this top secrecy is dismantled if someone outside the environment or the building wants to access that information that is considered a top secret. So this type of strict measurement is there used by a US government to provide the security measures that they are using for confidentiality information, like say for detection algorithms or for the defense mechanism of the country. So, but it is very reliable to use this information, but inconvenient to use it because it is not possible for a person to actually rocket the machine inside a room. So that other person has to access the particular machine in some other way. So say if a person has some passwords or biometrics associated with which the computer machine is, so another person has to include their biometrics included in the system's vulnerability assessment to assess the machine against vulnerability condition. Now the vulnerability assessment does from the program threats like Trojan horse to the port scanning, where we can be used most harmfully or against no harm. Say about the port scanning is done by the vulnerability assessment for the users who are intended for good purposes of that user system, not any harm to the system. But some computer designers took this as a vulnerability assessment for obscurity because it cannot consider as a security measure, because the cracker can get the information by using the same tool which is used by the designer to protect the system. So the cracker can information about this particular vulnerable point on the system, which it's very easy to implement the intrusion. Now this intrusion implemented by the intruder will be given by the same tool, and this tool is used by the designer to fault that tolerance of that particular improvement area. Now say for within an office, a secrecy is maintained about some defense mechanism or a confidentiality information. Now outside the office, the information is secured because it is kept only inside the office. But it is very reliable to think that the office information will not be kept outside because the user who is using the information belongs to the office only. But also it is very unreliable because there can be a member, good as well as bad, who can use of this information misinterpretably. Now the user who are using it outside the office can use this information and use that on the interconnectly of that user, that is the unauthorized access of that particular user. So vulnerability assessment should be done at this level to produce the port scanning as an obscurity measurement of taking the vulnerability assessment. Some designers take this tool as a reliable way because they think that it is not only a tool to take the security measures, there are other tools also which can work in conjunction with this tool to produce the vulnerability assessment. So in this way, vulnerability assessment assess each security measures against the threats, the attacker or the spywares that is provided by the computer system as a provision for the intrusion by the attacker. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and subscribe to Ekeeda.